White as snow, red as blood. Chapter 13. Snow walked in front of a groggy Nathaniel, who still had no idea what was going on around him. He was tired but also excited that Snow had woken him up. "So where are we going again?" he yawned. "To see Benjamin." "Okay, but why?" "To learn more about Framsey." "Snow," he complained, taking her hand so she would stop walking so fast. She had no right to be this energetic when he was still half asleep. She continued tugging him along, that is until she got lost. They came to a split, and she let out a nervous laugh, turning to him with a sweet smile. "Nathaniel, which way is Benjamin's study?" I don't think I know. My stomach is empty, and I can't think straight." "Do you know how disappointing it is when a beautiful woman greets you in the morning, but instead of having a nice breakfast with her, she wants to take you to see another man?" Unfortunately for Nathaniel, Snow wasn't impressed by his latest tease. So, she stared at him blankly and then made a choice, taking them down the left hallway. He sighed, thinking he'd at least get a kiss for his troubles, but he wouldn't let their adventure to Benjamin drag out more than it needed to. "Wrong way. Benjamin is over here," he relented. Snow bounced, now trying to keep up with him. He was pleased, however, when she happily kissed his cheek. Better yet, she didn't even process what she had done. There was no hesitation whatsoever, and she kept walking as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And Nathaniel loved it. While he found Snow's shy behavior cute, he wanted her to be comfortable around him. With a newfound rigor, Nathaniel guided Snow to Benjamin without any delay. They climbed a set of stairs, and Nathaniel forgot his manners as he burst into the wizard's study, which was more like a broom closet. The poor man launched out of the small, creaky bed in the corner, putting up his fists as he got ready to fight. Nathaniel stared at the man with raised eyebrows, waiting for the wizard to realize who they were. Benjamin squinted, dropped his fists, and put on his glasses. A big smile spread across his face. "Oh, two esteemed guests. What brings you here this morning?" Snow scooted around Nathaniel so she could properly speak to Benjamin. However, the room was tight, so there wasn't space for her to stand without invading anyone's personal bubble. Nathaniel graciously guided her in front of him before hugging her from behind, deciding his space didn't matter as much as Benjamin's. While Snow didn't register the kiss she gave Nathaniel earlier, she did register this, and her cheeks flushed. So, Nathaniel took note that public displays of affection were still iffy. Well," Snow stuttered, "I was hoping you might have more information on Framsey." Benjamin nodded and turned to the makeshift desk, which was a thin wooden board with two book stacks as the legs. Above the desk was a shelf, which was also nothing more than a sheet of wood. It was apparent to Snow that the budget for the head magician was lacking, especially in comparison to the court herbalists. The wizard pulled down a small chest and handed it to Snow. These were the personal possessions he left behind. "Aside from what you already know, I don't have much else to tell you. His potions aren't all that different from what other wizards have done besides combining his blood in the mixtures. I still don't know where he got that idea from, though. All that mattered was learning how to break Nathaniel's curse. Which, if I may ask, Your Highness, how did you know killing Framsey would save you?" "I was informed Richard never got around to telling you." Nathaniel looked up from the redwood chest in Snow's hands, distracted by the burnt monograms on top of it. "Oh, I overheard a conversation in a tavern one night. It was on the outskirts of the kingdom. I believe most of the people inside were wizards or witches." Benjamin curiously tilted his head. Was the tavern called Old Fellow's Brew? Nathaniel thought back, seeing as it happened a long time ago. "I believe so." "Why? Do you visit there often?" "Quite. I remember getting advice from people there all the time when I was researching Framsey's potions. Especially when I first started working at the castle. Well, it seems your efforts helped me after all. I'll be sure to, Nathaniel looked around the room with cobwebs in the corner. I'll get you a better room. As the men spoke further, discussing what accommodations Benjamin would like, Snow swung the top of the small chest open. Inside, there was a blue quill that had seen better days, a rock with numerous cuts in it, and a comb that was missing half of its teeth. One last object was inside, but it was hard to identify with all the items on top. Snow carefully picked up the rock and leaned against Nathaniel more so than she already was, slowly finding his embrace enjoyable even though it was embarrassing beforehand. She became even more grateful for his support when she saw the gleaming green jewel. Her fingers became numb, and the rock and chest fell out of her hands, crashing loudly against the stone floor. If Nathaniel hadn't been holding, she was sure she would have fallen, too. The men immediately drew their attention to her. Benjamin patted one of her hands while Nathaniel adjusted his hold on her, moving her away from the objects scattered on the floor. "What is it? You didn't cut yourself on the knife, did you?" Benjamin asked, remembering the contents in the chest. Snow didn't say anything, though all color drained from her face as she stared at the chest that was turned upside down. "Knife? What knife?" Nathaniel asked before kicking the chest with his foot. Hidden underneath the chest was a black knife with a green gem. Nathaniel understood right away, while Benjamin remained confused. He saw no cuts on her hand, so he couldn't comprehend what startled her. "What kind of sick joke is this?" Nathaniel growled. What reason would he have to attack a child? "A child?" Benjamin repeated, looking between Nathaniel and Snow. Was this knife involved in some kind of attack? Snow nodded absent-mindedly as she relived the traumatic experience once again. She would never forget that knife. And now that it was connected to Framsey, she could clearly remember it was his face underneath the hood and his voice that spoke those horrifying words. "Skin like snow, but surely your lips bleed red." She thought it was some random occurrence. That the action was spurred by her unique looks or some kind of prejudice. Yet, it was Framsey who later wandered around on the same mountain as she did. Surely, he knew Snow was the same girl. He had also seen Rose, too, so he must have known. "Come on, let's get you out of here," Nathaniel said, moving Snow away from the knife and to the stairs. Benjamin hurriedly put everything back inside the chest and shut the door once they left. He wanted to inquire some more, but it was hardly his place. Once Nathaniel got Snow out into the main corridor, he let her lean against the wall, and they slid onto the floor. Her breaths were shallow, and she firmly gripped the fabric on Nathaniel's sleeve. She came here, thinking she'd find something about Richard's curse or Framsey's dealings with the Queen. Then, a vile thought struck her. Snow wondered if the Karoo flower's pollen was on the comb she received from the Queen, the comb that Snow had searched for afterward but was unable to find. And the corset, Snow asked herself if that, too, was the Queen's feeble attempt to kill her. She would understand the Queen's desire to get rid of her and Rose since they were common girls snooping around where they shouldn't be, but this started before they were wrapped up in Nathaniel's curse. She chased the thought away when she couldn't think of any reason the Queen would want her dead when she was a little girl. There was no motive to speak of, but what motive did Framsey's have? Was he truly just a creepy stalker who happened to be working for the royal family? It was possible. "What are you thinking?" Nathaniel asked, lightly brushing her cheek. Slowly, she met his eyes. She couldn't tell him about the disgusting thought she had. "I just feel sick. That man must have been following me around my whole life. It doesn't make any sense. Well, my parents wanted him dead for a reason. He was trouble, but he's gone, Snow. He can't hurt you anymore." His words soothed her, and she wrapped her arms around his chest, listening to his heartbeat. When they heard footsteps, they looked up and saw Rose and Richard approaching them. Their expressions were about as grim as Snow's. However, Nathaniel felt a stabbing pain in his gut when Richard asked to speak with him alone. He didn't think the day would worsen, but it did. Snow and Rose sat outside on a bench in the garden. Behind them was a rose bush, and in front was a large water fountain. Because the weather was still chilly, the bush didn't have any flowers, and the fountain didn't have any water. They hadn't seen Richard and Nathaniel since they parted ways in the hall. While Snow listened, Rose explained what happened with the Queen and Elijah. However, Snow's mind dwelled on the black knife and how Framsey could have attacked her at any time in the mountains. "All right, so spill what happened to you." "You're clearly upset," Rose said once her sister didn't react to her last bit of news about being Richard's intended bride. "Do you remember that man that attacked me?" Rose thought back. "You mean the time we went with Mother to the market?" "Yes, I've been haunted by that moment. I still remember the blade I was threatened with, and that blade was among Framsey's belongings." Rose wrapped her fingers around the edge of the bench, leaning forward. "You're positive it was the same one?" Snow nodded and then cried, "And I had this horrible thought that the Queen wanted me dead." "Rose, is that crazy?" Rose shut her eyes and sat back, her hands coming up on her lap. "And just when I thought we solved everything. Truthfully, it doesn't make sense. The royal family hired him as the head magician, not to work as an assassin. And what reason does she have to kill you?" Snow couldn't agree more. She batted her tears away and said, "That's why it's crazy. I'm just being paranoid." "Nah, let's not dismiss this gut feeling. Tell me why you thought of her first, and then we'll decide if it's crazy. After all, most of our hunches have been right, and you told yourself that it was time to play with fire. And the way I see it, you're getting over the idea that all smiling people have good intentions." She gave me a hair comb before Nathaniel's lesson on poisons. I haven't seen it since, so she may have put the pollen on it. Rose twisted her lips to one side. "That is strange, but it doesn't give us any proof. And while we were right about Richard's circumstances, I doubt Nathaniel or Richard would take kindly to us accusing their mother of attempted murder. Nor would they want to believe it. I don't want to believe it either, but how do we know certain this time around what the truth is? We can't confront her like you did today." "No, we can't," Rose said, shaking her head. Then she tapped her shoes together. "But we can keep an eye on her like we did with Chief Elijah. However, we'll have to trade off in shifts, seeing as we don't regularly see her. Plus, we can't go missing at the same time. And if she notices us lingering around, should we use girl advice as an excuse?" Rose grinned mischievously. "Ooh, I like it. And if you're going to be queen, of course, you would have questions for her." Snow stood abruptly, the image of her being queen scaring her more than a murderous mother-in-law. "Wait, queen? I can't be a queen." The snicker glided out of Rose's mouth. Of course, Snow hadn't thought about Nathaniel's ascension to the throne. No doubt he, Richard, and their mother were speaking about it now. "Well, if you want to marry Nathaniel, it does come with a treasure trove of responsibilities. But how about we focus on the crazy mother-in-law first? Or maybe you want to ditch our princes and start a business as detectives? We could call it Red Snow Investigations." "That's so morbid," Snow exclaimed before she clamped her mouth shut and looked around to see if any other court herbalists were out and about. Thankfully, it was just them braving the cold during lunch break. Rose stood and brushed her backside off since the bench had been filthy when they first sat down. "Well, crimes aren't pleasant, Snow. But I think we'd be great at solving them. Stop talking so loudly, Snow hissed, pulling on her sister's arm. It was about time they got something to eat.